We got a whole whack of crazy stories, and I will guarantee you that this one right here is going to be the least controversial of what we talk about today. So kind of strap in, because that lull in news lately, yeah, it looks like it's over for at least today, because we got two right now kind of twin situations of a whole bunch of destabilization, at least in Haiti and at least in Cuba right now. Okay, you guys know about the communists kind of cracking down, and the people are starting to rise up again in Cuba. And I've been waiting for everything to kind of calm down and try to make sense of what's happening in Haiti, but right now they have a president with a big old hole in their head, a la JFK, and don't really have a lot of answers as to who's responsible for it. I've seen a bunch of people have been arrested so far, and then there's also some kind of tenuous connection there that I'd like to do a little bit more digging on before we do anything larger with that. But just know right now that there are two big crises happening right now in the world, but because it would be people actually trying to flee a country that has a legitimate crisis going on right now, the U.S. is deciding to get all fucking border hawkish on us and close everything down. I made my stance clear on immigration, and in fact, I've been researching it a bunch because I would like to partake in the legal practice of it. And I've also said, yeah, okay, if you want to be seeking asylum, yeah, you go to your nearest country. And then, especially in the case of Cuba, yeah, the United States being what, fucking Miami Beach is what, like 80 miles? Yeah, it's pretty much the closest. So if you're going to be offering, or if the world's genuine guiding principle is to allow for asylum, you should be taking these refugees under your wing, at least for the time being. And it looks exceptionally bad when you just have a revolving door policy just a few miles to the west. But no, what? Those are the good brown people, and you don't want the wet brown people? I don't know what you guys are trying to go with here, but it seems a little bit off. And as for Haitians trying to come up, dude, they got a plan for you. Don't come or anything like that, because you guys end up voting the wrong way, especially if you flee any of the asylum camps. We'll just take the good brown people, the preferable brown people. Homeland Security Chief says U.S. will not give refuge to those fleeing Cuba and Haiti by boat. Of course, we'll touch on Haiti here for a second, but just give you a little bit of backstory on this. People fleeing Cuba and Haiti by boat will not be allowed to enter the United States, even if they demonstrate fear of being persecuted or tortured in their home countries. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Doesn't that name kind of just seem a little bit sus, especially if he's going to be turning away Cubans? Anyways, we'll get to that shortly. Allow me to be clear, if you take to the sea, you will not come to the United States, echoing the points that Kamala Harris made not that long ago. Don't come. Don't come. Mayorkas, a Cuban immigrant who fled the island with his family in the 60s, issued a stern warning in the wake of seismic political events that have rocked Cuba and Haiti in recent days. So it was alright when him and his family came up, but now people who are actually, in, I'm not going to say any more or less dangerous situation, because we're having the people clash with a communist dictatorship right now. And when he was fleeing, that was when Fidel Castro was getting entrenched as being the dictator, so it's not too much of a different situation. But I don't think JFK or LBJ was down there trumpeting the same thing. Shit's happening in Cuba? Yeah, we gotta just make sure that everything's hands off on that one. Fucking dickhead. In Cuba, large-scale protests erupted over the weekend, forming one of the biggest public demonstrations of dissent faced by the island's communist government. At least CBS had the balls to address the communism aspect of this. Not too many other outlets, including the White House themselves, will even touch that subject. Meanwhile, in Haiti, a brazen assassination of President Jovenel Moïse has thrown the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere into further political upheaval. Yeah, but don't worry though, the Pentagon says the U.S. team going to Haiti to assess the needs, seeing if they're going to be needing some freedom. Because we're going to be having a whole hell of a lot of troops coming out from the Middle East in kind of like the middle of the night. Don't worry about it. We aren't going to be telling anybody when we're leaving. That should end well, even though it should anyways. But it looks like their little trip home could get diverted to Haiti for a little help. A team of U.S. security and law enforcement experts is traveling to Haiti to determine what assistance Washington can provide following the assassination of the Haitian president last week, the Pentagon said on Sunday. Today, an interagency team, largely from the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI, I don't trust either of them, but alright, this is what they're doing, are heading down to Haiti right now to see what we can do to help the investigative process, Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby told Fox News Sunday. That's really where our energies are best applied right now, in helping them get their arms around investigating the incident and figuring out who's culpable and how best to hold them accountable. Haiti has sought U.S. aid in securing the country and investigating the attack that killed President Jovenel Moïse on Wednesday at his Port-au-Prince home and plunged the impoverished island nation into further turmoil. Haitian authorities said 2 Haitian Americans were among the suspected assassins. Yeah, and there's a bunch of other ties there that we need to divest an entire segment on, so we'll come back to this, but just know that you guys stay in Haiti. Stay in Haiti. There's no detention camps on the southern border for you guys. That's specifically reserved for preferable Mexicans. But back to Cuba anyways. They do have legitimate fear, okay? We didn't have any reports of Sunday night, and plus, can you trust any numbers that a communist party would really release out there? But we know at least one person's dead so far. To go on with the numbers that we reported on the first day, a bunch of people were missing. 57, I do believe. But yeah, at least one person is dead. First confirmed death in the largest protest in the country in decades. A man has been killed amid nationwide protests in Cuba. Authorities confirmed on Tuesday. The Ministry of the Interior of Cuba said in a statement that it mourns the death of 36-year-old Dibu Laurencio Tejeda. This marks the first confirmed death of the largest protest the communist-ruled country has seen in decades. Tejeda died on a Monday when taking part in a clash between protesters and the police in the Arroyo Naranjo, a municipality on the outskirts of Havana, according to the official statement. He's probably a spy or somebody who wanted to do something bad to the communist regime, so he bad man in this scenario, right? In the statement, the regime claimed the demonstrators were vandalizing houses, setting fires, and damaging power lines. I highly doubt all of that. It also accused protesters of having attacked police and civilians with knives, stones, and other objects. I'd believe the police part, but I also think that they're trying to muddy the waters because these are communists we're talking about here. The state-run Cuban news agency reported that, let's take this at face value, organized groups of antisocial and criminal elements, their version of the far right, I love it, had tried to reach the suburb of La Guerna's police station, seeking to attack its officials and damage the building. Protests erupted in multiple cities across Cuba on Sunday, with citizens calling for greater freedoms and an end to the communist dictatorship. Cubans protested against ongoing shortages of food and other goods, high prices, and power cuts amid a deep economic crisis in the country, made worse by the pandemic-related lockdowns. No, that's all it was about. They weren't getting enough vaccines. They didn't get the jab in enough time, and there were too many cases out there. That's why people took to the streets in the hundreds of thousands, right? And the same reason why Mayorkas, because the first statement was from a few days ago and he had to come back out and clarify his stance. Biden administration warned its Cubans, Haitians against sailing to the United States. Do not risk your life. Do not do it. Do not flee the communist dictatorship, because we've seen in the 2020 election that you guys tend to vote Republican and you guys don't like this whole socialist thing, and that you guys raise the alarm better than anybody else because you know about it firsthand. We don't want you here. It's crazy how they're so firm on this, but then at the same time, it's like, hey, the border crisis down in South Texas, what are you going to do about that? What border crisis? There's no border crisis. I haven't been to Europe either. Ugh. Cubans and Haitians shouldn't try to use boats to migrate to the United States, a top Biden administration official said July 13th. The time is never right to attempt migration by sea unless it's my family doing it, to those who risk their lives doing so. The risk is not worth taking. Oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is. If you didn't live in a communist dictatorship, I don't know, but I'm just a couple of generations removed from my great-grandparents fleeing the Ukraine during the outset of the Soviet Union, so they would know a thing or two about a thing or two. And I could only imagine the horrors that they escaped. Allow me to be clear. If you take to the sea, you will not come to the United States. You fucking bet your ass they'll continue to do that. And it's impressive, right? You guys have probably seen those pictures of the different rafts that these people from Cuba use to float all the way to South Beach. They aren't much, mostly because you don't get much in Cuba, okay? And it's one of, I don't know how else to put it, but it's one of the most brave things that somebody can do. Risk that fucking little stretch of land in order to get there. Like, but then at the same time, all of these fucking coastal elites will not address that whatsoever. Oh, why would those people be trying to flee from a socialist and a communist nation? That's exactly what we should be having here. Like, what the fuck? Why would they be doing that? Because it's horrific at the end of the day. And maybe this will start to wake some people up. Some people up. Not enough people are really covering this with the proper terminology. And a lot of people are still, if they're even bothering to talk about it at all, are saying everything that led the people to take to the streets had something to do with the mismanagement of government. You care to elaborate on why it was mismanaged? Oh yeah, because the people in charge couldn't quite anticipate how detrimental all of the lockdowns would be. Oh, can you go ahead and dig down on that a little bit further? There will be no more questions on that, Kay. We hear you loud and clear. Again, I repeat, I do not risk your life attempting to enter the United States illegally. You will not come to the United States. Protests have begun in recent days against the ruling regimes in Cuba and Haiti. U.S. officials have said they support the Cuban and Haitian people, but that doesn't include welcoming them into America, Mayorkas said. We are acting in furtherance of our humanitarian obligations to people around the world, and the humanitarian message to the people of Cuba is do not take to the seas. People die when they try to migrate in the maritime channel regularly. Yup. Because communism doesn't work, and the people that flee there and successfully get to the United States, they can see it happening. They can see the government trying to centrally plan more and more and more, and they fled a country that was doing just that. They fled the horrors that causes. So they can see it when it's happening. It's not so much happening anymore in Florida because Ron DeSantis is looking after stuff fairly admirably. But at the federal level, oh yeah, you can see it with the different mask mandates on federal land, with the horrific overspending, which unfortunately we can't get to today, but it doesn't look like the infrastructure bill is going to be passing through the House, which is fucking aces, because we shouldn't be throwing around numbers that are in the trillions all fucking willy-nilly. But these guys right here, Cubans rally in Florida. Communism, the last thing you want for a country like America. They see the writing on the wall, and they want to be able to turn course before things become impossible to reconcile. Naples, Florida. Hundreds of Cubans gathered in South Florida on Tuesday to protest not the lack of medical supplies in Cuba, but the brutal communist regime abusing their family and friends back home. Cuban and American flags filled the streets of downtown Naples as protesters joined around the country and in Cuba to oppose dictatorship that has gripped the island since 1959 when Castro took over. It is misinformation that COVID and hunger is causing the protests in Cuba. Oh, it is, but that's not the only reason why. That's not the truth. People are tired of the government. They are tired of not being free, and that's what they are fighting for, said protesters and local singer Yener Alvarino, who's part of the musical duo with Adrian Argenta, called Argenta and El Yen. Thousands of Cubans took to the streets in at least 20 provinces in Cuba on Sunday. Though protests have continued, hundreds of people are likely missing, and police have reportedly peppered crowds with bullets to subdue opposition. Where were the non-lethal forces, and did those officers decide to shoot them in the leg? Where's that crowd right now? Oh yeah, they're silent. They're totally silent on this one. President Miguel Diaz-Canel, who you can still read every single one of his thoughts on Twitter, because you can have a communist dictator, or if you just take a look, you can see the thoughts and the feelings of the Ayatollah all on Twitter, but you can't hear a fucking snarky comment about the Biden administration from former President Donald Trump. No, that dude's dangerous. Not the guy who's making people fucking go missing in Cuba right now. No. Or Barack Obama, who bombed more fucking brown people than a year's worth of Patron. Yeah, but Diaz-Canel said the protests by urging revolutionaries to violently assault unarmed protesters on the streets, describing his call as an order of combat. Oh yeah, so he's directly inciting violence, but don't worry guys, it's K. In response to Diaz-Canel's order, both uniformed and plainclothes police officers have unleashed a wave of repression on protesters and has included shooting at them, attacking them with dogs, and public beatings. So just like the South in the United States in the early 60s, dogs and fire hoses. So it looks like they've really advanced so fucking far with the glorious communist utopia. The regime also appeared to shut down internet access to stem the flow of citizen journalist videos depicting extreme repression. Yes, I do. We all do, Argenta said at the Naples protest when Breitbart asked if his Oh, if he still has family in Cuba, Argenta said he came to the United States when he was 18 years old, looking for freedom. That's why I listen to these guys when it comes to the horrors of socialism and communism and fascism, really, because they live it or lived it on a daily basis and how repressive and evil it is. And the ones who make it across, the ones who are brave enough to fucking construct those rafts on old tires and lawn chairs, they're some of the hardest working motherfuckers because they know how bad the situation was and they never want to find themselves back there. Really, when this is all said and done, I super hope that we get a change in Cuba. But I don't really know how that happens without direct intervention. Biden's just wondering when he's going to get an invite to a baseball game from Fidel, so don't expect anything to be happening anytime soon. With that said, guys, we got to talk about some real spicy stuff happening in Maricopa County and in Georgia. You know we're going to be talking about those audits, and receipts are starting to come in, and it's looking good. It's looking real fucking good. Thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.